Absolute mad, lads. The Yama-Ichi War. Let's go.
Channel, we've talked a lot about various organised criminals, whether it be the Razor Gangs of Glasgow giving you a warm welcome with a slash down your jaw, to the Nordic biker gangs literally blowing up prisons with rocket launchers. But one organised criminal group that everyone seems to have a massive interest in, including myself, is the Yakuza. A very mysterious and interesting group that has resulted in an absolutely banging video game series. Now, I'm sure we're all well aware of the Yakuza, the well-dressed gentlemen that regularly attend karaoke bars, along with dancing on Friday nights. Turns out the games are not that much different from real life. Well, maybe a little bit. The Yakuza very much like to stay out of the public eye completely and leave everyone totally in the dark about their activities, even during times of conflict. But sometimes conflict has a nasty habit of spiralling out of control, and it becomes very hard to keep your secret group's activities secret when you are gunning down people in broad daylight. The bloodiest ever Yakuza conflict. The Yama-Ichi War.
That's the bloodiest one, Jack. Oh, I'm looking forward to this one.
I have such incredible respect for their tradition.
Oh.
And it's quite scary.
It's so scary. Oh. The Triad and the Yakuza. Those two are the scariest gangs.
Comment on this video because it really helps me in the algorithm.
That's the Triads and the
Japanese.
Before
we get into the video, it is in fact your boy Raid Shadow Legends. Join my clan because there's no one in it and I'm very lonely. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes, or should I say the pork and noodles of the war, we need to establish some good grounding and understanding of what the Yakuza are, and how such a major conflict like this could break out among several Yakuza families. And sorry to burst anyone's bubble, but as much as I would love to do an in-depth account of the full history of the Yakuza, we'll only be giving a rough background on the primary families, along with their traditions and almost superstitious practices.
Nice.
I would love to go a lot more in-depth, but trust me, this video is going to be long enough. As with most crime syndicates, the Yakuza stemmed from humble beginnings. By humble, I mean being complete outcasts of society. They are one of the oldest, potentially even the oldest, continued crime syndicates in history, though that is debated. One thing that you can't debate is that their origins are very old, going all the way back to the samurai era. There isn't a definitive origin of the Yakuza, as with all groups, they slowly develop over time. Like, the Yakuza didn't just pop into existence one day. They slowly evolved over a long period. Before they were called the Yakuza, they were called something else, and before that they were called something else, and so on and so on. What we do know is the Yakuza's origins are believed to stem from Japanese gamblers and peddlers, the more looked down on individuals in society. Now, with the Yakuza, one thing that plays a massive part in their organisations is their status. Not just among their fellow gangsters, but also in society at large in general. I'm sure you could break down the timeline of the Yakuza and how their public perception has changed over time, especially in the 20th century. But the best way to visualise it is like this. Generally, when you think of the Yakuza, they are like a third party of authority in society. Almost vigilante-like, where these are the guys you go to when the police can't help. Whether it be protecting your favourite big titty anime character themed cafe to keeping foreign drug dealers out of the streets of Tokyo. And the Yakuza mostly don't chase out foreign drug dealers.
Is that real? Because that's scary.
That's what they're going to do, bro. That's what's going to happen.
Don't go sell whatever we do is we don't go and try and infiltrate the Japanese market.
I'm going there for a holiday and that is it.
Yeah,
Leisure.
that's it.
Leisure
Yeah,
only.
Yeah. Just don't buy anything or sell anything.
Or don't buy to sell.
No, that's it. Oh, you imagine going to drop off a gram to someone and then just 4 Yakuza gangsters jump out of the van.
I'm going to leave my shit there. Just go.
I just might not be coming back.
For a one-way ticket to the airport.
Because they see them as
Give
competition.
you a one-way ticket
They
to the
chase
sea.
them out because they are foreign. You get rid of them because you don't want competition. I get rid of them because I don't like foreigners. We are not the same. And generally, that is how the Yakuza used to operate. The idea of the Yakuza, and especially their mindset and traditions, stem from their very origins in the samurai period. So, along with the ideas of honour, pride, and protecting the vulnerable, those are all key aspects of their syndicates. But let's not get too romantical just yet. As you can imagine, over such a long period of history, the crime syndicate would see a lot of changes, especially moving forward into the modern period, which would popularise the image of the chivalrous Yakuza member, which we'll touch on more later. But for now, let's establish the 20th century Yakuza and how the Yakuza ended up in basically a mini civil war all across Japan. So, without going in too deep on the Yakuza lore, we will of course primarily focus on the main family involved in the conflict, who are still to this day the largest and most powerful Yakuza family in all of Japan.
Okay, so these are big
The
boys, Jack.
Yamaguchi-gumi. The Yamaguchi-gumi or Yamaguchi
Yamaguchi-gumi.
family can find their roots in the early 1900s. But in the early beginnings of the family, they weren't much more than just another of the very, very many small-time Yakuza families. It wouldn't be until after World War II where they would truly start to grow into what we see today as the modern-day Yakuza. The Yakuza exploded in growth after World War II. This is because Japan was pretty chaotic after the war. There was military occupation, society was breaking down, and institutions and law and order were collapsing, which created a perfect fertile breeding ground for the Yakuza to really flourish. Chaos is a ladder, etc. etc. But one of the most important factors that led to this growth was the leadership of Kazuo Taoka. Just a year after the bombs were dropped, Kazuo would be appointed as the third Kamicho of the Yamaguchi family at the age of just 33. The last Kamicho, Noboru Yamaguchi, would be a major influence on Kazuo because at a young age he was a struggling orphan until he met Noboru. We aren't sure if he was officially adopted by him or not, but in Kazuo's early years he would be a street fighter under the influence of Noboru. A very handy skill to have for his future as a Yakuza member. Finally, leading the family himself. The Yamaguchi family at this time allegedly had ties to the local dock workers in Kobe, where Kazuo would later work at the Kawasaki shipyard. But this didn't work out because he ended up getting into a fight with his boss and he lost his job, which pushed him into the Yakuza lifestyle. Which he seemed more than happy to do because he felt that the normal wagey way of living just wasn't for him. But his Yakuza career came to a pause in 1937
It's not good.
when Kazuo was imprisoned for murder. And he was in prison until 1943, which was the height of World War II. Why did he get released from a murder sentence so early? Well, one theory is Japan was running a little low on manpower, and it was pretty common for them to dip into the prisons to replenish the stock. So
that
this
wouldn't surprise
could have
me
been
at
why
all.
he was released
Yeah, it makes
early,
sense.
but we couldn't find out specifically. We aren't really sure what happened between then and his appointment to Kamicho, but what we do know is that Noboru died in 1942 while Kazuo was still in prison. So,
Okay.
after presumably being seen as the best fit for leadership, Kazuo would be appointed as the leader of the Yamaguchi family. This is where major
yeah.
things would change
Big
for the
step up.
family, as Kazuo would turn the family from doing small-scale petty crimes to much bigger and much more profitable crimes. The current jobs that the family were doing were small things like breaking up strikes at the docks, small protection rackets, and other petty crimes, which would result in only a little bit of profit while still carrying very heavy prison sentences. Basically, high risk, low reward. This, of course, wasn't
what you
profitable
wanna
at
be
all,
doing when you're doing
especially if
crime.
all of your gang members end up in prison over small, tiny jobs that don't even have that much money in them in the first place. So instead, Kazuo looked at expanding the family. He encouraged the main members to have their own businesses and to even have their own sub-family within the Yamaguchi. Along with this, a
okay.
proper family hierarchy would be set in place, with, of course, the Kimicho being at the very top, with several pyramid-style layers going downwards. A shit rolls downhill type of deal. With this much better system in place, the gang would explode in numbers and profit, partaking in both legitimate, semi-legitimate and illegal business, along with other standard crimes to boost the gang's profit. This included a variety of jobs. You see, all different types of Yakuza families will focus on different jobs depending on what area they're based in or what their members specialise in.
Nice.
But generally,
Nice.
So you
there
have
is a lot
access
of
to all
crossover
sorts of
in their
things within the
crimes.
family.
This can include anything from prostitution, protection rackets, weapon smuggling, extortion, and drug dealing, especially in amphetamines. It wasn't called the workers' drug for nothing. The Japs absolutely love their speed. But it is important to point out that a lot of Yakuza families hate drugs, and they actually have severe punishments for their members if they get involved in the drug trade. Other than this, they would also be deeply involved in sporting events like boxing, sumo wrestling, MMA, illegal gambling houses, clubs, love hotels, pachinko, you name it, the Yakuza probably had their hand in it. With that, the Yamaguchi family ruled over all other
Japanese love
families
hotels are
with
fun.
how
mate, they
effective
do.
they were at
smart.
expansion, leading to their gang gaining members by the thousands, having literally over 10,000 full official members at their peak.
God
And that's
damn, they dress so
full-fledged
well. They
members.
did.
That number doesn't include associates, who are always included with the modern statistics. Associates are people
Wow.
who work with or for the Yakuza, but they aren't actual full members of the Yakuza. So, from the 60s to the 80s, which were considered the golden age of the Yakuza, they were ruling the roost all across Japan. One police officer even described the Yamaguchi family as being like a department store, referring to the extremely diverse ways they had of gaining income and the vast array of products and services. The core of the Yamaguchi would be based in Kobe City, Shinohara Honmachi, and Nada Ward. Although throughout the years there would be expansion all across the various prefectures in Japan, with good intention not to step too far into other Yakuza families' territories. They are
guy's
gentlemen
really
after all.
changed the-
With that in mind,
I mean, that's
let's
respectable.
give you an idea.
Yeah, he's really like changed how this branch of the
Yeah.
family is working. It's really cool.
Idea of how powerful and entwined the Yakuza were within Japan. For example, during the Anpo protests in the 60s, President Eisenhower would visit Japan, and the Japanese government obviously needed security for such a major and important visit. So they asked the Yakuza. The Japanese government asked the Yakuza to run security for a sitting US president. This was for a few reasons. First, of course, is the
The government has no control.
I mean, who would you rather? Them protect them or them attack them?
Oh yeah, 100%. You're gonna pay him. You're gonna pay him.
I just love it how the government's like, look, guys, we know how bad you are.
Like-
We just want to make sure that no hooligans are going to fuck with this guy. This is the US guy. This is a problem. If he dies on our soil, we in big trouble, guys.
Big trouble.
I need you protect
You know.
him. I'll be sweet as shit. I'll ignore the boats coming in. I'd be like, fucking yeah,
No worries, my man.
not a problem.
Yakuza had plenty of strong fighting men to run security. And second, the Yakuza have been closely tied with politics, especially with right-wing parties.
Okay.
Seriously, the Yakuza's connections with Japanese ultranationalism could be a whole video. in and of itself.
I'm
And
interested.
lastly,
Make it.
The Yakuza had plenty of political ties throughout Japan, anywhere from the local police station down to the main parliament. And by ties, what I really mean is people that were taking bribes. So when you ask the Yakuza to provide security, and
I mean,
there
let's
might
be
some
honest.
communists.
The Yakuza knock at your door and go, "You're gonna take this brown envelope," or you see your family in there. They were nice. They were nice living, you know. So you're gonna take this envelope and you're gonna start telling this information. What are you doing? You're taking a fucking envelope.
I've already made a pot of tea.
Yeah, like
down
I
to
don't know
the
what else you're gonna
Victoria's
do at
Sponge
that
rich tea
point. Like,
biscuits.
you can't be a rat because then you're dead. Then your family's dead.
Yeah.
Like, you're in a no-win situation. If you get put in that situation, then I guess you start doing drugs and just start living with the consequences.
The thing is though, if you get bribed, you're gonna fuck dead. There's more money in your pocket. innit?
A lot of people don't have options. A lot of the time, a bribe is done with a threat as well. You take the money, or we do this. It's never just the bribe, is it? You know.
There. Well, the Yakuza were more than happy to help out, especially since this would both protect Japan from communism as well as harden the Yakuza's stance within the politics of Japan. If you watched our video about the Yakuza porn star kamikaze pilot, yes, that was something that happened. It's a great video. You should go watch it. Then you
Let us know if you
remember
wanna
the
watch
name
it.
Yoshio
Want
Kodama,
us to
who
react
was
to
a
it. That's the one.
political fixer with strong ties to the Yakuza. He, of course, was the perfect middleman for arranging the security for Eisenhower's visit. So yeah, the Yakuza at this time in Japan had a lot of power, especially the Yamaguchi-gumi. Also, if you're wondering what the word is on the tail end of Yamaguchi, it basically just means family. You might hear
Okay.
me referring to other Yakuza families with the term Gumi, Kumi, Kai, or Ika. They all basically mean family or clan. So don't get too caught up in the semantics of it all. It was just for easy clarification in case you were wondering. Moving back to Kazuo, his reign would last for a very long time, even
shit,
surviving
nice.
an assassination attempt in 1978, where a member of the Mitsuda-gumi named Kiyoshi Narumi shot him during a limbo dance at a nightclub in Kyoto called the Bellamy.
limbo
the Yakuza
dance.
like to dance and practice limbo.
Yeah.
They also really fucking love karaoke. The Yakuza like to party. That's like the one thing that the Yakuza games didn't exaggerate. But back to the assassination. Thankfully for Kazuo, he survived even after being shot in the back of the neck with a pistol. He was quickly rushed to hospital in a
Holy shit.
bulletproof Cadillac. As for the assassin,
that-
well, he was found a few weeks later, dead near some woods in Kobe. I'm pretty sure we can all guess what happened there. Kazuo's nickname.
I'm surprised he wasn't seriously hurt.
Oh no, he wasn't. A few weeks later, he was.
Okay,
with
I'm
them
surprised
for a
he wasn't
few weeks.
dismembered.
He probably was. 100%, he probably was.
He had to have been dismembered.
He
Had to
was
have been.
fully tortured for weeks on end, kept alive
Kuma.
deliberately
Yeah.
to
Which
endure
means
the pain.
bear. Not,
Genius,
I know what it
boys.
sounds like.
Absolutely
Never mind.
genius.
And this was apparently because during fights, he was known for trying to claw people's eyes out, which made a lot of people very scared of him and rather reluctant to question his leadership.
Yeah.
But despite his ferocity, time comes for us all. And sadly, in 1981, Kazuo would end up dying of a heart attack, leaving the family in a rather awkward state of affairs. Kazuo himself, the bear, or also titled as the Godfather of Godfathers, would have Yakuza bosses from all over Japan attending his funeral, with many musicians, politicians, and well-known people
But if there's no
also
line
in
of succession,
attendance
Jack.
due to his influence.
Wait.
I mean, this guy's hands stretched very wide in Japanese society at the time, with his own daughter even marrying Kitaro, the very well-known Japanese musician. Kazuo's death caused a lot of chaos within the Yamaguchi-gumi, and the police saw this as an opportunity. So they started arresting people left, right and centre. Hundreds of Yakuza members were arrested, and I mean literally hundreds. The police did this with the hope that...
So, for someone who completely changed what the mafia is, or what they are,
Yeah.
built the structure, done everything, they were able, even at his death,
Yeah.
everyone came together
Yeah.
to mourn. And then the government went, that's a fucking perfect opportunity, let's have the lot of them.
And getting those smart lads, really, innit? If you've got everyone in one spot, I know it's
It
disrespectful.
might not be at there, but the police just decided, let's just fucking get them. Now there's no one there, let's get them. Fucking hundreds. Imagine just
all the
walking down the
bosses, but
street.
no protection.
Everything. Just imagine like members just chilling on the side. Just jump out of a police van, you're all under arrest, get in, fuck off. Right, next lot. What?
Literally.
That's crazy.
Yeah, brother. Yeah.
handing
Disrespectful.
out very heavy prison sentences right after the death of their beloved leader would completely demoralise the Yamaguchi-gumi and make them believe that their time had come and they should just pack up and shut down. And usually
Revenge
it
a
would
bitch.
be that simple. But the Yamaguchi-gumi immediately set out on restoring order. And to do that, they just had to decide who would be in charge now. Well, usually the next person in charge would be whoever the old boss declared as next in line. The problem was the guy who was next in line was Kenichi Yamamoto, who was in prison. But since his
shit.
release date wasn't too far off,
Ah,
the
okay.
heads of the
Yeah.
family simply decided to wait for his release and then put him in charge. Seems easy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, sadly, Kenichi barely lasted a year and ended up dying of liver disease in 1982. So the Yamaguchi-gumi were again without a leader
shit.
and again fighting off chaos starting in the family. So that begs the question, who was next in line to run the Yamaguchi-gumi? Well, this was one of the very rare occurrences where a female was put in charge, just
Okay.
temporarily for the time being.
Okay.
The
Yeah,
Yamaguchi
interesting.
placed Kazuo's wife Fumiko as the temporary leader of the family until she and 8 other high-level bosses could decide who would be the next leader. This would come down to 2 candidates, Hiroshi Yamamoto and Masahiro Takenaka. Both very different leaders running their own syndicates. They provided very different skill sets that the group of higher-ups would assess, along with the guidance of Fumiko. Now, to be clear, although Fumiko was technically put in charge, she wasn't necessarily a Kimicho or Oyabun, both terms used for the overall leader of the family, or in
Okay.
simpler
I
terms,
see.
the godfather. She was kind of like a temporary vice president where she could make important decisions, but only up to a certain point. As you can imagine, with most crime syndicates, they are male dominated and usually have a male only policy, with women taking care of certain other duties that the guys wouldn't really deal with. You see, unlike some other crime
Fuck's
syndicates,
sake,
the
Jack.
Yakuza-
You're the reason why we might get demonetized.
That was funny! I like if you thought that was funny too.
As you can imagine, with most crime syndicates, they are male dominated.
Oh, fuck, I
and
didn't mean to go
usually
back
have
that far.
a male
Yeah, I get to see it.
No, we're not seeing it.
in the United States, and the Yakuza have a very strict way of life, along with their own set of traditions, although these may all vary between the families. Similar to the mafia in the United States and Italy, these traditions date back very many years, with it also being entwined with their own local culture. Some of these traditions you may have already heard of, such as Yubitsume. The act of cutting off
Yeah, I've
one's
heard
own
this one.
pinky finger or the tips of other fingers after disrespecting the Oyabun, who takes the role not just as the head of the family, but also as a father figure to the lower-ranked Yakuza. The severed pinky or other parts of fingers would then be presented to the Oyabun in a gift box, kinda like that scene in The Big Lebowski. This dates back centuries to the samurai period, where a similar practice was done in old gambling houses if someone couldn't pay their debt. It's also alleged to be an old samurai practice because the samurai...
Fuck that, give me my money. I don't want your fucking tip of your finger. If you owe me peas, brother, I ain't taking the tip of your fucking finger.
Yeah, but
you
that's gonna make people think that you don't care about your money, bro. Be happy he's not taking your hand.
Brother, I'd be beating the geezer back of blue. I'd be like, your fingertip ain't worth nothing. Where's my peas at, brother? Where's your home? Where's your home? We're going to get my peas, brother. I ain't having it. Do not come and think that you can get away with just chopping off your pinky. Give me your hand. You are now my bitch. Like, fuck's sake.
samurai were very skilled swordsmen, and if you are a swordsman, the pinky finger is very crucial in being able to use a sword effectively. So,
yeah, but if you're a
you didn't
peasant,
have
it's
the
nothing.
Pinky, you became more dependent on your leader and fellow...
What are we saying? What? £3,000 you could probably borrow and chop off a fingertip? That's what I only need. Huh? Loan. It's a loan, but if you're paying it back with a fingertip, right? That means what? I can get £6,000 for just these 4 fingers. And you only need to keep 3. You get rid of the pinky and the other one. So you just get rid of these 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, I kind of like that though. That's
Okay.
a problem.
So you get rid of 3,
I need to
which
get
is
rid
these 2 and your pinky on this one.
Oh.
So yeah.
Oh, that's
It's only the tips
okay. Yeah, pinky tick on that one.
and the other
Pinky tick
2.
on that one.
I can
and
get rid
that
of this
one.
one. No, I can get rid of this one.
No,
on this
I
hand.
need that. I need that for rolling. I need those.
Yeah.
for
So I can
rolling.
get rid of these 2.
I could do. Oh, I could
3,
roll with that.
this is what I'm saying.
I could do it with that. I could do it with that. I could learn to roll like that.
This is what I'm saying. So if it's like, if you're getting into debt, right? Let's say how much debt can you get into and then chop off your pinky or chop off your
It's
tip?
amazing how we've just figured out that we'd rather sacrifice certain fingers and still be able to roll.
Yeah.
than actually.
I'm saying, if I was back in those times, I'd be like, what? So I can borrow £3,000, cut a tip off, right? And then that debt's done, and then go to someone else and borrow another $3,000, and then cut a tip off. I can do it 3 times and get away with it before it actually starts affecting my hands. before it starts.
Up and 3 fingers down.
Nah, tips, 3 fingertips down. It's worth it. It means like only the tips.
It's
It means
better
if
than
I
selling
grab
a
a
kid,
can
man.
like this, I've still got a decent hold on it with this part of my hand. It's only the tips, bro.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
As long as I've got my fingers to roll and finger a bird, I'm good to go.
warriors in battle.
know
That's
if I
why
wanna make it.
offering up your pinky finger was seen as a massive declaration of dedication to your leader and fellow warriors.
Oh.
Nowadays, though, it's seen as the closest thing a Yakuza can do to taking their own life, to show that they are
Okay.
truly sorry for their actions. This, you might think, isn't so common, and I'm sure in recent years the practice has decreased, but it was found that almost 50% of the known Yakuza in the 90s had practiced Yubitsumi. That was just the known members, so
Shit.
it was probably a lot more. So you might be thinking these guys are pretty hardcore when it comes to their loyalty and honour, which they definitely are. This usually comes down to their set of rules or way of life known as Ninkyo-do, like their own form of the Bushido Code. Like a samurai, they are supposed to be respectable and gentlemanlike. So with that, there are certain things they can and can't do. There are some basics like don't rat out the family or talk to the police, no personal involvement with narcotics, never harm someone who is vulnerable, such as women or children, and also don't hold back your earnings from the family. But the thing is, certain Yakuza families may or may not partake in all or none of these rules, because over time the Yakuza is constantly changing, especially with their ethics. For example, around the 80s to 90s, more and more so-called Rambo Yakuza gangs were turning up, doing whatever the hell they liked without really having a code, being no different to the other foreign gangs within Japan. The Yakuza certainly are an interesting one when it comes to these ethics, and I would say that the majority of them still follow these codes and traditions. There's actually an old Yakuza saying to outline their discipline and their respect for the higher-ups. If the Oyabun says the passing crow is white, it's white. These sets of traditions and taboos set the Yakuza apart from other criminal syndicates
It's
that
white,
may
Jack.
not care as much for similar ethics. For example, the Yakuza take death very, very seriously. It's not a simple case of just saying, well, he's a bit of a pain, better just whack him like it's the Sopranos or something like that. That's where the whole redemption arc of cutting one's finger off comes into play. There are plenty more examples of proving yourself to be a Yakuza as to be a Yakuza. They say that you have to be ready to take someone's life along with your own. You know what the Japs are like with their honour and suicide. So in the Yakuza, if you're going to kill someone, you better have a good reason for doing so.
I see, that's actually quite respectable.
About the other ways of proving yourself as a Yakuza. Again, you've probably seen or heard that in Japan, they do not like tattoos. Like, at all. Even today, there is still a massive stigma around tattoos in Japan. Doesn't matter if you've got a pretty butterfly or a boomer type skull scenario going on, they just don't like them. And for good reason. The Yakuza candidates, after going through a rigorous and tedious amount of training to prove one's worth, will eventually have to get a tattoo, or in Japanese, an iruzumi. Compared to normal tattoos that are done with a machine, iruzumi are done by stick and poke, which takes a very, very long time, especially when you're getting your whole back covered. Imagine going to the tattooist for 8 hours a day for 2 weeks. Again, this is another way for the candidate to show, hey, I actually want to be a Yakuza, I'm not just fucking around. And also, of course, this roots out any undercover feds, since I don't think any undercover cop is dedicated enough to get his entire body painstakingly stick and poked. You're probably wondering how we know so much about the Yakuza.
There's got to be
well,
one
it
or two
turns out that in Japan, being a part of the Yakuza isn't inherently illegal. These days it kind of is, but we'll touch on that later.
Interesting.
The part that actually is illegal
Just being a part of it
is when you actually commit crimes. Yakuza across Japan, especially in the 20th century, would openly show where their main clubhouse or headquarters was, along with full member lists and other administration details. Like, they would have a full sign on the building basically saying, "Welcome to your local Yakuza office," just telling everyone where they were. Think of it as a more formal way of having a biker gang club.
They're not hiding. They're straight up.
Yeah, because as long as they weren't caught doing a crime and it wasn't told or snitched on, they could get away with it.
Hi guys, this is where we work. This is everyone here. This is everyone that works here. This is Dave.
Literally.
This is the office, the administrator. We've got Stephen over there, IT.
We got Bill. He's waste management. Don't ask where or how or what.
Like, having a biker club itself isn't illegal, but committing crimes as a gang is. So how did they get away with this for so long? And trust me, this is relevant to the story, which I know, hell of a tangent, we will get back to it soon. But compared to every other crime syndicate, the Yakuza were very open with their lifestyle, even to the authorities. Throughout Japan's modern era, the Yakuza and the law would work in an almost symbiotic relationship where they would feed off one another. Let's say the Yakuza gave the police some information on a foreign gang, and the cops, in return, might let one of the Yakuza's boys off the hook for something. That's just an example, since it would be very hard to get specific examples of the Japanese authorities helping criminals. Also, as for the what happened to don't snitch thing, well, if you're part of a foreign gang, the Yakuza don't care.
No, because you're a foreigner.
If you're foreign, the code doesn't apply to you. Along with this, the Yakuza like to keep a good status within society, often helping out at charity events, clearing the streets. I mean, even when the earthquakes and tsunamis were hitting Japan, the first people on the scene were the Yakuza handing out supplies to people.
Wow.
Generally keeping to the idea of the chivalrous samurai. I mean, they don't even refer to themselves as
say anything
Yakuza,
but respect
rather
it.
as
It's so well done. I think that's fucking brilliant.
It's well done to be able to tread the line to make yourself at a point where it's like, they're bad.
Yeah, but how many other people do you see helping out in a tsunami and that?
I think
I know obviously a lot of people did,
there was
obviously,
a lot.
but I like it how they were the first ones on the scene type of deal. Like they're getting involved.
Yeah.
I like how they're actually keeping to like their old code.
Yeah.
I do respect it a lot.
Yeah. It would be interesting to find out though, because obviously you don't hear about it.
Yeah,
but
no,
I bet
you
it
never
does
hear
happen
about
sometimes.
anything like it. No.
Yeah.
Chivalrous organisations, seeing themselves as protectors of their community when the law can't deal with it. For example, let's say you run a quiet little bar and some hooligans decide to step in and cause some shit. The Yakuza would deal with them. Or how about you're in downtown Tokyo and you notice that there are rampant Nigerian drug dealers all over the place. The Yakuza would get rid of them. Or let's say you're getting some hassle from the Chinese dragons. Don't worry, the Yakuza has got your back. When I give those examples, there is some truth to them. As in, the Yakuza was and still is the main barrier keeping foreign gangs out of Japan. This can include the Korean mafia, the triads, the Nigerian mafia, and even Iranian drug dealers. This is why the Japanese government and the Japanese people are very reluctant to completely stamp out the Yakuza.
I do understand
if they do,
that.
then that creates a power vacuum. And whatever fills that vacuum will probably be a lot worse than the Yakuza.
Yeah.
Of course, Japan controls crime a lot better compared to some other countries. And the reason for that is probably the Yakuza. Anyway, the Yakuza have been seen as those vigilantes who deal with the bad guys when the police can't. But of course, the Yakuza aren't all cherry blossoms and boba tea. They are still a crime syndicate, and they have committed some pretty atrocious crimes. Maybe not as bad compared to some other crime syndicates, but that's partially why they did so well in Japan, because they managed to maintain that perfect balance between fear and love.
Yeah.
That was a hell of a tangent we just went on. At least it was an interesting one. I'm okay with massive tangents as long as they're interesting. But anyway, this video is about the Yama-Ichi War, so let's get back to it. With the departing of the last potential leader, the Yamaguchi-gumi had to make the decision of who would be the next Kumicho. So let's discuss the candidates. Firstly, there was Hiroshi Yamamoto, aged 58, who had a lot of success under his belt by providing a lot of good advice and assistance towards Yakuza businesses, along with successfully moving southward in Japan to the island of Kyushu. This expansion, of course, provided a lot of wealth to his local family, but his timid, non-confrontational nature wasn't favoured by the higher-ups, versus his main opponent, Masahisa Takenaka. Takenaka, out of the two, was the more aggressive type, and younger by a few years, being 50 at the time. Along with that, he was a long-time friend of Kazuo and his wife Fumiko. But with his aggression also came a big list of crimes that he had been charged with, including illegal gambling, tax evasion, based, battery, and very many other violent offences. And due to this very long rap sheet, if he ever got arrested for anything, it would likely result in a large sentence, which would be bad news for the Yamaguchi-gumi and probably result in them having to find yet another leader. So he was seen as a bit less professional compared to Hiroshi, who was seen as more intelligent and business-minded. But sadly, Hiroshi's intelligence wouldn't be enough, and after the vote, Fumiko and the higher-ups chose Takanaka as their new Kumicho in 1984, with almost 80 other families attending the ceremony. After the majority of the bosses disappeared in their fashionable Mercedes-Benzes, which were highly favoured cars of the Yakuza at the time, Fumiko asked Hiroshi to not have any hard feelings and to cooperate with Takanaka as his subordinate. Hiroshi refused.
Oh,
he was
here we go.
absolutely outraged by the decision, and he made this well known. This was not a smart thing to do. The seeds were sown. So, a few days later, Hiroshi held his own press conference. Yeah, the Yakuza used to hold press conferences. At this press conference, he underlined his opinion.
So they must have had a press conference to announce the leader they just announced.
Oh, God. This is where it goes down.
It's like the Bloods and Crips having
Could you imagine them having a press conference?
a murder happens and both of them come out and just go, so it wasn't us. And then GDK's come in and we're like, yeah, it was us.
Yeah, that one weren't us.
Fucking hell.
On the vote, and he said, and I quote, "I cannot agree to seeing Takanaka become the fourth head of the Yamaguchi-gumi. I told Mrs. Taoka that I regretfully could not accede to her request. That is my frank and final decision." This, of course, was the semi-intelligent way of handling things. Not long after this, Hiroshi, along with 18 other lieutenants from the Yamaguchi-gumi, met in one of Kobe's top restaurants and discussed the situation. And they all decided to split from the Yamaguchi-gumi and form their own family known as the Ichiwakai. All dressed in their new dark blue suits, they celebrated the occasion in a long ceremony known as Sakazuki, where each member would exchange sake as a symbol of being blood brothers. Remember, similar to the Italian mafia, this is a family after all, and they really do consider each other as brothers, bound by tradition and honour. After Hiroshi left, not only did he take away several key lieutenants from the Yamaguchi-gumi, but he also took an estimated 13,000 members and most of the Yamaguchi's arsenal, including a variety of firearms, leaving Takanaka and the Yamaguchi in a very vulnerable position. But of course, the Yamaguchi and Takanaka also had to have their own celebrations, and as a way to one-up the newly formed Ichiwa family, they held an even grander ceremony for Takanaka on Shikoku Island. Things were starting to heat up a little bit with nothing popping off straight away. But the tensions were very high, and you know this wasn't going to be smooth since the Yamaguchi considered themselves as a militant force, almost akin to a paramilitary. And with how many weapons they still had, they almost were. Sure, they weren't on par with the amount of weapons some random rebels in Africa or South America might have, but for a country with some of the strict...
Those boys have guns coming out of every single possible place they have.
Why does that look like a group picture of us on holiday?
Gun control laws in the world, the amount of weapons that the Yamaguchi had was very considerable. And Hiroshi knew this. The next 6 months after the ceremonies, no shots were fired. But tensions would still be very high, with
Okay.
the Ichiwa family starting to lose ground to the Yamaguchi. This was mainly due to one tactic the Yamaguchi employed by luring the defecting members back with a variety of benefits. This included amnesty for the old members, along with added retirement pay and even upfront cash of roughly $40,000,
Whoa.
which the Yamaguchi-gumi could easily afford because they were very wealthy. This proved to be very effective, with the Ichiwa family dropping to less than 3,000 men in a very short
Whoa.
amount of time, with not a drop of
Whoa.
blood spilled.
Whoa.
Yet. This brings us to 1985, and with the Yamaguchi
You
gaining
imagine
ground
losing
over the
10,000
Ichiwa,
men.
both in
I mean, they've just been offered $40,000, the equivalent to more money in your pension and amnesty. See ya, brother.
Yeah, but you now know if the other side win, you're dead.
Yeah.
Because I now know you can be brought.
Yeah, that's the other issue.
So...
What do you do?
What do you do?
Go to the bar and drink sake.
membership levels and areas of control, Hiroshi had to take drastic measures to teach the Yamaguchi a lesson to stop interfering with their business. In late January of that year, the Ichiwa family sent a squad of hitmen armed to the teeth to Osaka, where Takanaka's mistress's apartment was. You're not really a crime boss if you don't have a mistress. But anyway, meanwhile, in the apartment building, Takanaka and two of his best men were in an elevator. Then, when the doors opened, this happened. I know, I'm sorry. This is what actually happened.
I'd imagine that probably is what happened.
Oh.
You might think, oh, what a badass and brutal scene from the Yakuza video games, but nope, that was based on a real event that actually happened. That was the assassination of Takanaka. And they put it in the fucking game. The doors opened, and the hitmen opened fire, and Takanaka and his two men were instantly killed in a hail of bullets. And they...
I really want to play this game. I want to play through the game.
Oh, mate.
They put it in the fucking game. The first shots had now been fired, and they were quite the first shots. They killed the fourth Kumicho, the leader of the Yamaguchi, and he was killed by ex-members of the family, no less. The war had now started, and it would spread across the various areas of Japan. Sadly, there wasn't the time for any ceremonies so swiftly after mourning the death of their recent Kimicho. There just simply wasn't enough time to go through the whole rigmarole of selecting a new leader. So, Kazuo Nakanishi was accepted as the temporary leader of the Yamaguchi until the war was seen through. So now the two families were officially at war. And... This was a war. Over the month, the police would arrest over 90 Yakuza members, along with confiscating almost 50 handguns and rifles, including an M16 automatic rifle. Over time, various street fights and stabbings and shootouts would occur between the families, with there being over 36 Yakuza killed in over 200 shootings. It literally got so bad that the local newspapers would keep daily scorecards with the latest killings for each side. The Japanese seem to have a little bit of a history of doing that shit. Most of these killings...
No!
Can you imagine waking up, getting your newspaper and just going, so what's the daily gangster death rate today?
Jesus.
Which side's winning the war?
Oh, let's get the free Metro paper on my way to work today. Oh, London East End's up for 67 points in 2 days. Oh, Southside's catching up with 86. Oh.
Literally.
Royal Rumble this weekend down the park. Let's go watch that. Fucking Christ, man. Scorecards. That's mental.
Jack.
Things would be done by what is called the Toko Taicho, or kamikaze squad leaders. These soldiers and the family are regarded as some of the most respected Yakuza because they're not only taking other people's lives for the family, but also risking their own. And speaking of kamikazes, Hiroshi, the leader of the Ichiwakai, allegedly ended up having his home suicide car bombed by a soldier of the Yamaguchi-gumi. But he wasn't killed in the attack, and it's not clear if there was anybody else injured other than the bomber himself. Yeah, this war got so out of control so quickly that the Yakuza were doing suicide bombings. From there, the shootings would carry on,
He
with
did
the
kill the
Yamaguchi
boss, though.
getting sick of the ongoing
family.
war and hoping for a quick end to it. The issue with these battles and shootings and stabbings spilling out onto the streets was public opinion was very quickly turning against the Yakuza, and it was damaging their image as the chivalrous samurai. This, of course, wasn't good for business or the publicity of the families, or just it wasn't good for the Yakuza in general. So they had to come up with something drastic to bring the war to a quick end. In late 1985, the Yamaguchi-gumi would send 2 key representatives to Honolulu in Hawaii, which included Masahisa Takanaka's brother, Masashi, along with their financial controller, Hideyomi Oda. There, they would meet
I'm really
who they
interested
thought
what that
were members
paper was.
of the Italian mafia in the United States, when in fact it was feds. It was undercover feds who were recording the whole interaction. The Yamaguchi representatives were hoping to trade £52 of amphetamines and £12 of heroin, which had a street value of $56 million, in return for a variety of firearms, which included 3 rocket launchers, 5 machine guns, as well as up to 100 handguns. Their plan was to have one final end of the movie, massive raid on the Ichiwa family, and finally put this entire war to an
Fucking
end.
hell.
But to top
They were going to go full military, take them out with 3 rocket launchers, 5 machine guns, and over 100 handguns.
Fuck that, bro.
They were about to go, you got what?
Fuck that.
300-400 people left? We're wiping you off of Japan.
Oh, that's fucking
Your
mental.
family is about to be erased. But they got caught.
That's fucking insane.
all off, they also tried to hire the apparent Italian mafia to send a hitman out to Japan to assassinate Hiroshi because none of the Yamaguchi members could get close to him.
Holy
Sadly,
shit.
as you can imagine, they were busted instantly and held in the United States awaiting trial. But thankfully for the Yamaguchi family, both of them would get off on all of the charges scot-free. Now, how the hell did they manage that? Well, wait until you hear this. The Yakuza claimed that they were in Hawaii to try and book the famous King of Pop, Michael Jackson, for a show over in Japan. And as we mentioned earlier, the Yakuza were strongly tied to the entertainment industry in Japan. So, to anyone that wasn't paying attention, that does check out. What made the case against them even weaker, though, is that the key witness, who was apparently a pro wrestler who was also a long-time drug informant, was actually arrested for extortion during the trial. So, the combination of a compromised key witness, along with the witness admitting that they had discussed booking Michael Jackson with the Yakuza alongside all of the whacking and firearms deal stuff, which made the entire situation look like a form of entrapment. Along with this, the argument of them agreeing with what the feds were saying was based on the Japs saying hi, which mostly means yes in certain contexts. But a cross-cultural expert also highlighted that hi does not strictly mean yes, but can also be used as a form of confirming that you understand what someone is saying. Just like how in Scotland saying aye in a conversation doesn't strictly mean that you agree with or confirm with what is being said. You are just acknowledging what is being said. So yeah, because of all that, the case fell through. During
That
Pay for good lawyers. Always pay for good
is
lawyers.
absolutely incredible.
Just pay for good lawyers. That's all you need
Got
to
arrested in
know.
Hawaii for literally a massive trade.
Massive,
and then
massive
he
trade.
just walked out
Guns
because
and
the
drugs.
Americans have just completely ballsed it up. I applaud you, good sir. Well done.
In late 1985, things would go quiet, as there would be a ceasefire brokered by another well-known neutral family known as the Inagawa-kai. So, things would be relatively peaceful until a member of the Ichiwa-kai broke the ceasefire. This wasn't planned by the Ichiwa-kai, and to show respect for the ceasefire, the family member that broke the agreement had to commit Yubitsumi. So his index finger was presented to the Inagawa-kai as an apology. So yeah,
That
tensions
is
were
seppuku.
Seppuku, that's
So
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
seppuku is the suicide.
Yeah, the samurai, yeah. That's
But
what
what he said is the fingertip.
pinky, yeah.
very high, and the other Yakuza families were not happy with the war, especially the neutral Inagawa-kai, because their boss at the time, Susumu Ishii, tried to resolve the issues between the warring families. Why weren't they happy? Well, of course, with such a major war happening in a fairly quiet nation like Japan, it starts to drag attention in from both local and international authorities, which was especially heightened with the involvement of the US feds. But the peak of the war would
He's
hit
the one,
in
the CIA.
early 1986.
Normally is
the
them.
Ichiwa family had taken a lot of important people to their side at the beginning of the war. And included in those individuals was 36-year-old Hideo Shiragami, running various companies and having plans to expand to the northern Mariana Islands near Guam. Hideo brought a lot to the Ichiwa family. This wouldn't last long, however, as in February of that year, Hideo was found dead in the sea off Saipan, near a notable area pessimistically titled Banzai Cliff, where hundreds of Japanese people, including soldiers, women and children, decided to kill themselves rather than be captured by US soldiers in World War II. There,
I think I remember
Hideo's
seeing
body was found
something like
with his
that.
body covered in marks of clear torture, along with his ears, tongue and middle finger being cut off. Topped off with some crushed ribs and a bullet wound through the head. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
pretty brutal.
Yeah.
It's clear that this was a message to the Ichiwa family from the Yamaguchi, as well as an obvious warning about what would happen to defectors. But this murder was so brutal that even the Yamaguchi leadership thought that was a little bit much. And barely a week after the killing, an emergency meeting was held. The families finally announced that the war was ended, though the war wouldn't officially end until 1989. If you
Okay.
are wondering why, this was due to the Ichiwa-kai family disbanding due to a lack of membership and general weakness of their family. This was mainly because the brutality of Hideo's murder made a lot of people kind of not want to join the Ichiwa-kai.
Nah.
So, with dwindling membership in 1989, they just fizzled out. So, Hiroshi Yamamoto notified the Higashinada Ward Police that the family would be disbanded and retire their actions as Yakuza. And as for the Yamaguchi-gumi, although they had won the war, it was at a great cost, since plenty of their own men had either been killed or put in jail for very long sentences. So yeah, a very bleak win at best.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say that surprised me is that Kazuo Nakanishi, even though he was only supposed to be a temporary leader of the Yamaguchi, had actually won the war. But despite that victory, he was still replaced as leader by Yoshinori Watanabe, also known as Mr. Gorilla. Oh, I love Japanese nicknames. He came in as the 5th Kumicho. So you're probably thinking, is that it then? Just the war was just over,
No.
just like that. I mean, yeah. I mean,
Oh.
say what you will about the Japanese, they're fucking efficient. Although not the bloodiest in the world, I mean, essentially it was just a weekend in Mexico, was still pretty influential on Japan and the Yakuza in their society.
Not wrong.
He's not wrong.
really
He's
not.
not wrong. That's why when people go, I'm going to Mexico, I'm like, okay, have fun.
Oh,
It's like Brazil as well, yeah. I'm alright,
don't
thank
need the
you.
tourist tracks, bro.
No.
So you're probably thinking, is that it then? Just the war was just over, just like that. I mean, yeah. I mean, say what you will about the Japanese, they're fucking efficient. The war, although not the bloodiest in the world, I mean, essentially it was just a weekend in Mexico, was still pretty influential on Japan and the Yakuza in their society. Having over 36 people killed, some very brutally killed, and hundreds more wounded in a war between organised crime families was just unheard of in Japan. This brought a lot of questions from the public and a lot of interest
Okay,
to the
I see.
Yakuza both during and after the war, because people either thought, wow, the Yakuza are so cool, Desu, or they just weren't happy with the bloodshed and chaos that the Yakuza had brought to Japan. Not long after the war had ended in 1989, the Japanese authorities wouldn't forget this either. And in 1992, the anti-Boryokudan was put in place, which severely disrupted the activities of the Yakuza, especially publicly. The easy comparison for this law would be the RICO Act, which the United States
with you.
brought in specifically to target the mafia and other organised crime families. Except the anti-Yakuza laws introduced in Japan were like the RICO Act on steroids. Since the Yama-Ichi War, more and more really strict laws have been brought in to fight against the Yakuza, with each new law being even worse than the last. Young people from poor backgrounds were the biggest recruiting pool for the Yakuza. Poor children saw the expensive suits, the fancy cars, the cutie waifus, and the respect, and they wanted some of that.
They wanted all of
So
it.
they signed up. But with these new laws, if you are a Yakuza member, or even if you are just remotely connected to the Yakuza, so not even a member, just a vague associate, you are not allowed a bank account, you can't rent an apartment, you can't get finance for a car or for any other item, you can't even get a mobile phone contract. You essentially can't participate in society at all.
I was about to say, they just go, no, you're not a part of society. You're basically not a Japanese person. You can't get a bank.
That's
Wait a minute. So if you wanna disappear, you just become a Yakuza.
much.
You just want to disappear in Japan, you just become a member, and then that's it.
fuck it.
This basically completely removed every incentive these young poor kids had for joining up. As a result, there are practically no young people joining the Yakuza anymore. And young blood was essential to the Yakuza, since the kids would be the ones doing all the dangerous grunt work and getting arrested, because in Japan, under 18s get very lenient sentences for very harsh crimes.
I
Seriously,
see.
if under 18s commit murder in Japan, they do like 3-4 years in a reform school, not prison, reform school, and then they just get released, which made the younger guys perfect for carrying out hits. And once they got out of prison, they would climb the ladder in the Yakuza very quickly for their sacrifice and dedication. They would do it because it was a good career move that would only cost them about 2 or 4 years. This lenient system was used and
If you have nothing, at least you have a career path. It's better than what a lot of people have nowadays. They get into a job and they got no way to go up the ladder.
Yeah.
Oh, what? 3 years in the prison, and I've got other Yakuza in there.
It's not a prison. It's a reform school.
I thought they'd done 3 years and the reform school.
No, he said it's not a prison. It's a reform school.
What was the 3 years for then? I thought he said 3 years and a reform school, but fair.
And abused very widely by the older Yakuza members, since if an older member was accused of a crime and he was looking at 10 years, they would get one of the younger members to confess to his crime, since they would only do a very short, lenient sentence. This whole taking the blame for an older member's crimes was actually part of the plot in Yakuza Like a Dragon. But without young guys to do the grunt work or take the blame, the older Yakuza members have to do it themselves. And when they get caught, they are handed massive prison sentences, which only dwindles the numbers of the Yakuza even further. You might ask, why don't the Yakuza just pay and cover the expenses of the younger members then? Well, the Yakuza as a whole are struggling financially, despite the fact that these guys own and operate shit tons of legitimate businesses and companies, and even own property and skyscrapers and shit all over Tokyo. The laws make it illegal to do business with them. They're legitimate businesses. It's even banned to do business with the Yakuza's legal businesses. On top of that, the Yakuza's legitimate businesses, and even their current leader, Kenichi Shinoda, have all been sanctioned by the United States, making it even harder for them to make money. So
wait, the United States has sanctioned individuals in Japan.
That's rough.
That's rough, brother. That's rough. You got no chance.
Younger members, it being a lot harder to make money.
Fuck
plus
you.
The Yamaguchi-gumi suffering another huge split in 2015 of a bunch of families all breaking off to go do their own thing, leaves the Yamaguchi-gumi with an estimated membership of just 3,800 people. For comparison, the Aryan Brotherhood, a gang that mostly exists just within prisons and is one of the smallest prison gangs in the United States, has about 5 times that many members. The laws are so strict that the Yakuza aren't even allowed to put their signs up on their clubhouses. The public reactions to the supposed death of the Yakuza have been very mixed. Some people liked having the Yakuza around because they were a big help in keeping communities safe, and they would offer help and assistance to people who were struggling. But some people also consider them as dangerous thugs due to the Yama-Ichi War, or due to Yakuza bouncers beating unruly customers with bikes. By the way, I thought that hitting people with bikes was just a mechanic. No, it turns out that that was an iconic thing that the Yakuza used to do. Going all the way back to the 80s, they would grab a nearby bike and just start thrashing a guy with it. They
Holy
still
shit.
do it today, except it's against rival Nigerian gangs who don't have a love-hate thing going on. Everyone in Japan just hates them. Which is why Japanese people are very conflicted, because like I said before, whatever comes in to replace the Yakuza will probably be a lot worse. Another thing that did cause a lot of shit for the Yakuza and their image was the story of Junko Furuta. But I do have to defend the Yakuza here. The guys who did all of that shit were not Yakuza members. They were just pretending to be Yakuza members in order to scare her. The actual Yakuza had nothing to do with what happened to her. Also, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you're one of the lucky ones. Do not Google it.
No, I don't
However,
worry.
despite everything that I have just said about the death of the Yakuza, it might also not be true. Their death...
Well, Google it after the video, Jack.
Throws might be exaggerated to make it look like they are really over and done with, when in fact the rules changed and so did they. They might have just gone completely underground like most other gangs and are making more money than ever from all kinds of different avenues that they never touched before. And this whole, no, I'm too weak stuff is just all smoke and mirrors to trick people into thinking that they're gone. There are arguments to be made to both love and hate the Yakuza. It's not as simple as, oh, I've played Yakuza 0, damedane, Kiryu-chan! It's not... Sorry, it's not. I've been filming for a very long time. It's not gonna lose my mind. It's not as simple as that. The main argument for loving the Yakuza is that they are pretty unique in their ways, along with their main role of playing the good bad guys. Where, although they do bad shit, it's nowhere near on the same level as other criminal gangs. You know, the sort of idea of straightening out the common criminal into the gentleman-like gangster. All we know now is that the Yakuza are definitely still around, and are definitely changing from their old ways, taking a much more traditional crime syndicate method of operating more and more underground, with no cooperation with the authorities, no publicly visible clubhouses, and no press conferences, while tying all of that in with more legitimate businesses. With both the new anti-Yakuza laws and the eyes of international authorities, we probably won't ever see them involved in a war of this scale ever again. At least, I hope not. But one thing is for certain. The old Yakuza way is dead. What they will turn into, only time will tell.
Time will tell, and I'm looking forward to finding out.
Yeah.
Definitely, indeed. Oh, that was a good episode.
I enjoyed that.
Always good by Count Dankula. We thoroughly enjoyed it, and we hope you guys enjoyed our reaction as well. And if you did, you know what you need to do. You need to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we will catch you in the next video.